On this vote, the yeas are 310, the nays are 58. Voting present are 38. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Side or purposes, the gentleman from Oklahoma seek to be recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 747, resolved that the clerk of the House of Representatives requests the Senate to return to the House the bill, H.R. 3426, entitled, to amend Title 40 United States Code to limit the construction of new courthouses under certain circumstances and for other purposes.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. For what purposes the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent on behalf of the Pennsylvania delegation to speak out of order.
Without objection.
On Wednesday, September 17, in York County, our community suffered an unimaginable tragedy. Members of the Northern York County Regional Police Department and the York County Sheriff's Office were fired upon as they entered a home while attempting to serve a warrant relative to a stalking incident in North Codorus Township. 3 officers, Sergeant Cody Becker, Detective Mark Baker, and Detective Isaiah Emmenheiser were killed in the line of duty. 2 other officers, one from the Northern York County Regional Police Department and one York County Deputy Sheriff, were wounded and remain in the hospital. We pray for their swift and complete recovery. Mr. Speaker, this horrific and senseless act of violence has devastated the York County community. Hearts are broken. 3 brave public servants who answered the call to protect and defend did not return home to their loved ones at the end of their shift. To the families, loved ones, friends, and colleagues of these fallen heroes, we extend our deepest, deepest sympathy. We grieve with you, and the entire community shares in your grief. May we all keep the families of the fallen officers of the department, the York County Sheriff's Office, and all law enforcement officers in our hearts and in our prayers. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield some time to Congressman Perry.
I thank the gentleman from Lancaster County. And Mr. Speaker, the Psalms tell us that the Lord is closest to the brokenhearted, and we are brokenhearted on this day for the loss of these officers. Mr. Speaker, every day across America as we go about our lives, every day and every night, there are men and women that put on the uniform to keep our community safe. And they never know when they leave home, kiss their wife, their husband, their children goodbye, whether that's the last day or not. And it's a burden that most of us will never recognize, can't understand, will never experience. We live in a wonderful country because of the people that are willing to risk their lives and run to the danger. Run to the danger. Mr. Speaker, these brave individuals, the finest in America, certainly the finest in York County, gave their last full measure in support of the safety of their community and our country. We are heartbroken, and we pray for them. We pray for the departments. We pray for their families. We pray for our community, and we hold them up and we acknowledge their sacrifice on our behalf. I thank the gentleman from Lancaster and the whole Pennsylvania delegation, the whole House, for your attention to this matter. We have to do better. We have to deal with these things successfully, and we have to continue to honor those who stand in the way of evil every day so that we can remain free. And I yield the balance to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman for his words. Mr. Speaker, I ask that everyone rise and that the House observe a moment of silence to honor the memory of Sergeant Cody Becker, Detective Mark Baker, and Detective Isaiah Emmenheiser. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Ready? Chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purposes, gentlemen from Colorado seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize and honor the retirement of Manuel Hart, Chairman of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe. Chairman Hart has faithfully served his people for more than a decade, leading with vision, humility, and an unwavering commitment to protecting the tribe's sovereignty and making life better for his community. Raised by his grandfather, he learned the Ute language and carried forward the traditions of his people with pride. Throughout his tenure, he has championed the tribe's water rights and worked to safeguard this critical resource for future generations. He's promoted education and culture and has worked tirelessly to diversify the Ute Mountain Ute economy through agriculture and business development. Chairman Hart has been a strong voice for tribal sovereignty, reminding us that the rights of tribal members as citizens of both their tribe and the United States must always be respected. On behalf of Colorado's 3rd District, I thank Chairman Manuel Hart for his decades of leadership and extend my best wishes to him in retirement. His service leaves a legacy that will endure for years to come. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Louisiana seek to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to discuss an issue that affects men of all ages, races, and socioeconomic backgrounds: prostate cancer. Just last week, I introduced a resolution designating September as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. As co-chair of the Bipartisan Men's Health Caucus, this issue is close to my heart. Every year, the Black community is disproportionately affected by prostate cancer. Specifically, Black men are twice as likely to die from prostate cancer as our white counterparts. This alarming trend highlights an urgent need for action. To address the disparities in prostate cancer outcomes, we must ensure at-risk populations have access to prevention, early detection, and treatment options. This disease does not have to be a death sentence, and this disparity isn't written in stone. We have the tools to close that gap. Together, we can increase awareness through campaigns like Prostate Cancer Awareness Month and Beat the Prostate Cancer once and for all. Together, let's end this scourge in our community. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purposes, gentlemen from Indiana seek to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to reflect on my very recent visit to Israel. It was a humbling journey through the Holy Land, where the history and resilience of the Israeli people left a deep impression. I stood inside Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a profound moment for me as a Christian. I was grateful to have met Prime Minister Netanyahu with Israel's President Herzog and our own Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Each visit afforded a deeper understanding of the enduring bond between our nations. Our delegation visited the site of the Nova Music Festival, where Hamas terrorists carried out one of the most horrific attacks on October 7th. The trip was both sobering and inspiring. It reaffirmed my conviction to stand with the people of Israel whilst working toward the goal of a more peaceful Middle East. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I quote, "Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power by using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted for censorship," end quote. These are not my words. These are the words of Brendan Carr, the current FCC chairman. This week, Chairman Carr called for Jimmy Kimmel's show to be canceled for using that very same satire. Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, suppression of free speech. I don't see this administration saying anything about limiting the free speech on Fox or OAN or Newsmax. Free speech is okay if you agree with it, but if it disagrees with you, then out it goes. That's the way it is in Putin's Russia, in Kim Jong-un's North Korea. That's the way it is in China and Hungary and Iran. But that's not America. America believes in something good and greater: free speech, free thought, free practice of religion. When we silence American voices, we slide every day toward the very regimes that we say we are fighting.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek to be recognized?
I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
1 year ago, Western North Carolina was slammed by the worst storm to ever hit our region. To many across the country, we thought that this might have just been another segment on nightly news programs or an article in our local paper. But for those of us who call Western North Carolina home, it meant so much more. In our mountain communities, waters crested above 30 feet. Winds peaked at over 100 miles an hour. 1,500 landslides destroyed hundreds of homes in many communities. Over 1,300 roads were blocked by damage and debris. 1.2 million citizens were left without power. 108 North Carolinians lost their lives. Over the last year, our mountain communities have overcome unimaginable obstacles with grit and determination. I couldn't be prouder that as a community, we've come back together, not as individuals, but as neighbors, friends, and family. Rebuilding hasn't been easy, but very few things that are worth doing are easy. Come Helene or high water, Western North Carolina will rebuild, and I am so proud of the resiliency of the people of the mountains. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The chair will receive a message.
Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed without amendment H.R. 2483, an act to reauthorize certain programs that provide for opioid use disorder prevention, treatment, and recovery, and for other purposes.
Gentleman from California for what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have giants in San Diego. I rise today to congratulate one of them, Mr. Tom Federer, who is being honored as Mr. San Diego by the San Diego Rotary. A lifelong San Diegan, Tom was born in 1934 and grew up in Point Loma. In 1957, he married his beautiful wife, Jane, a La Joyan. Tom served in the Army before beginning a long and successful business career in San Diego. Tom has had community service always, and it's been at the center of his and Jane's lives. Tom has spent more than 5 decades building up the community serving on the leading boards of the San Diego's institutions, which include the San Diego Yacht Club, the Bishop's School, the Fleet Science Center, the San Diego Zoo, the USD School of Law, the San Diego History Center. Notably, Tom was Commodore of the San Diego Yacht Club during its defense of the America's Cup in 1994. And his service to the San Diego Zoo is especially meaningful, as his father served as the zoo's board chairman in the 1960s. Despite his many achievements, Tom considers his family to be his greatest success, and they are a great blessing to San Diego. Tom, thank you for everything you've done for San Diego, and congratulations again on this prestigious honor. It's very well deserved. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to address the body for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize an inspiring moment in our community. The Spokane Impact's first home match this past Saturday at the Hub Sports Complex in Liberty Lake. The Spokane Impact is one of the founding teams of the Inspire Soccer League, the first ever national soccer league created specifically for athletes with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Launched by Project Inspire, this league is about more than just soccer. It's about bringing people together from all walks of life and making sure that everyone has a chance to experience the joy and connection of sports. Too often, athletes with special needs are left without access to the kinds of opportunities so many take for granted. Real teams, real competition, and real crowds cheering that on. This is an exciting new effort. There is so much going on with soccer in Spokane and across the country with the launch of our USL team and the coming World Cup, and I'm so proud that this has taken place. And I'd like to give a special shout out, Mr. Speaker, to the team's manager, Anna McCoy, who's doing a wonderful job in her new role. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Vermont seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, our nation is in crisis. We are in a very dark place, and Americans are scared, and they want to see a way forward. And we all need to start with ourselves. This morning, I sat and I lit a candle, and I thought about the anguish and suffering of Representative Melissa Hortman's 2 children as they try to cope with the assassination of their mom and dad. Then I sat and I thought of the pain and the torment of Charlie Kirk's family as they try to cope with the killing of their dad. Today, Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting Americans across the nation to do the same, to sit for a few minutes in the pain of these 2 families. And if you can feel compassion for one family and not the other, that should tell you the work that you need to do, the work that we all need to do. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to thank the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce for hosting the Chamber fly-in to Washington, D.C. this week. Over 90 members of the Chamber from the aerospace and defense, energy, housing, and community development sectors, among others, made the journey to our nation's capital. I had the opportunity to meet with several of these business leaders individually, and we discussed how we can work together to lower regulations, support businesses, and keep jobs in our community. Many of these business leaders are the reason why the Pikes Peak region is becoming one of the economic titans of the West. Relationships are the most important part of the legislative process, and I look forward to continuing to work together with these and every business leader in the 5th Congressional District to continue to grow our thriving community. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purposes, the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
Revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor Women of Toledo. This remarkably dynamic organization is celebrating 10 productive years of advancing good works, opportunity, sorority, and leadership in Northwestern Ohio. What began as a simple focus group has grown into a vibrant hub connecting thousands of women and girls to mentorship, education, resources to build lives forward. Through initiatives like Her Hub, which champions women-owned businesses, and Girls Hub, which inspires our next generation of leaders in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, Women of Toledo is shaping the future of our community. Bravo! Their story is a testament to the power of good people, good women, their vision, their persistence. From coffee shop conversations to packed ballrooms, they have built a movement rooted in e pluribus unum, women of various heritages working together for community betterment. Women of Toledo has forged partnerships with business, not-for-profits, and neighborhoods who believe that when women rise, our entire community rises. Congratulations, Women of Toledo, and I yield back.
For what purposes, the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, for the last 2 days, it's been remarkable, led by Foreign Affairs Chairman Brian Mast. We have actually met for nearly 36 hours straight to pass a State Department Authorization Act. And I'm very grateful that last night, indeed, a very historic step was taken as the people of the United States show their love and affection for the people of the Republic of Georgia. A amendment was passed that provides for no recognition of the illegitimate Georgian Dream government that has seized power in a rigged election in Georgia on October 26, 2024. And so we now have a resolution or amendment that calls for non-recognition. And I'm so grateful for my colleagues who joined in supporting that resolution. Indeed, as indication that what has been done is positive. The Speaker of the Parliament of Georgia, Shalva Papuashvili, has denounced this legislation and the unintended consequence. He reveals that the people of Georgia want to live in fairness and freedom. Additionally, today, the United Kingdom has passed legislation to block recognition.
Time has expired.
With this, we conclude that Charlie and Erica Kirk are making a difference for God, family, and country.
For what purposes, gentlemen from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the process of this country of drawing maps for representation, it's done every 10 years, immediately following the census. We have this wave this year of states setting out to redraw maps mid-decade, mid-census, without even any new census data. This is done for partisan purposes. My home state of California, for example, we have a commission that is supposed to draw the maps, not in the grubby hands of legislators with an eraser and ink. It's supposed to be done by independent. The voters of California affirmed 3 different occasions by their vote on the ballot that they don't want it being done by legislators. We see a scheme going on right now to take that away from the voters and put it back in the hands of the legislators. And so here's one of the results right here. This is the top of California where it meets Oregon and Nevada. That corner there, Modoc County, and it sounds as rural as the name Modoc implies, is now being linked all the way down here to the north half of the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County. This is the area here where they've had wolves introduced that are devouring the wildlife and the farmers and ranchers' livestock up there by the people down here that think it's a really good idea. So they're not going to have any voice as balance to talk about and talk in this place about how they're being devastated by policies coming from the urban areas. And that's what's known as Proposition 50. They should vote no on that in California and bring ballots back, leave the balance in place instead of partisan lines. I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as a designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise, and I rise now to proudly yield time to a person with great honor and integrity, a member of this Congress who has been on the right side of righteousness, a member of this Congress who stands for those who are among the least, the last, and the lost. She hails from the 14th Congressional District in the great state of New York, the Honorable Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. I yield to her such time as she may consume.
I thank the gentleman Representative Green for his graciousness. Today, the Republican House majority brought to the floor a resolution honoring, quote, honoring the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's assassination was a horrific and vile attack and incident of political violence. And condemning the depravity of Kirk's brutal murder is a straightforward matter, one that is especially important to help stabilize an increasingly unsafe and volatile political environment where everyday people feel more at risk. We can deeply disagree and come together as a country to denounce the horror of this killing. And it is not a license for the abuse of power and whitewashing of American history. Today's resolution only underscores the majority's recklessness by choosing to author this condemnation and honoring on a purely partisan basis, instead of uniting Congress in this tragedy with one of the many bipartisan options to condemn political violence and Kirk's murder, as we did with the late Melissa Hortman. Instead, the majority proceeded with a resolution that brings great pain to the millions of Americans who endured segregation, Jim Crow, and the legacy of bigotry today. We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake, who after the violent attack on Paul Pelosi claimed that, quote, some amazing patriot, unquote, should bail out his brutal assailant, and accused Jews of controlling, quote, not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it, unquote. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans, far from the working, quote, working tirelessly to promote unity, unquote, asserted by the majority in this resolution. It is equally important that Congress does unite to reject the government's attempt to weaponize this moment into an all-out assault on free speech across the country, all in the name of Charlie Kirk. President Trump and the FCC are now cynically threatening to shut down ABC and any outlets who give airtime to the administration's political critics. This is a disgusting attack on the American people and the very First Amendment rights that define us as a country. It is also the ABC Corporation's responsibility to refuse to embolden and participate in this corruption and escalation of censorship. We continue to pray for Mr. Kirk's family and loved ones in the wake of this terrible act. I am thinking especially of his children and his wife, whose grief cannot be measured. And with that, I yield back to the gentleman.
I bid the lady good day and would proceed now, Mr. Speaker. Again, and still I rise. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, with the notion in mind that what I have stood for, I still stand for. What I have stood for, I still stand for. It wasn't that long ago, Mr. Speaker, that I stood right over to my right, the seat next to the aisle. And Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States of America here for a joint session of Congress, President of the United States of America, indicated that he had a mandate. I, with a degree of spontaneity, Mr. Speaker, right over there, second seat from the aisle, collected my portable items, about to make my departure, traverse up to the doors and make my exit as a means of protesting what the president was saying. But Mr. Speaker, as I did this, I became overwhelmed with just the notion that something was going to happen very ugly, and it would be something that would hurt people who are on Medicaid and Medicare. And I also brought up Social Security when I spoke, but these are the things that I was overwhelmed with. And as a result of being overwhelmed and understanding what was about to happen, knowing that the committee with jurisdiction over Medicaid had a mandate to cut more than $800 billion, overwhelmed, Mr. Speaker, I did rise to my feet, and I did say to the president, you have no mandate to cut Medicaid. My colleagues across the aisle became very rambunctious and decided that what I was saying did not merit being heard, so they performed very loudly. I'm not angry with them. They performed loudly. And I wanted to make sure the president heard my statement. And I repeated myself and added Medicare and Social Security. My colleagues continued. I continued. I was evicted, and I was later on censured. Censured but not silenced. Yes, I stand today where I stood then. Censured but not silenced. I stand today where I stood then. It is best captured, would you please bring the stand over, please, someone? It is best captured in this photo that depicts what occurred. Censured, not silenced. So I stand today where I stood then. And I stand today where I stood then because there is a CR that has been brought before this House. And if I had voted for that CR, I would legitimize what I stood against. I refuse to legitimize what I stood against when I said you don't have a mandate to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and I introduced Social Security into the equation. That's what this was about for me today. The question was whether I would stand where I stood then or whether I would now agree that what was done then is something that I condone now. I condemned what happened then. My mind has not changed. The people who will suffer will still suffer. Why would I now decide that I'm going to bless, if you will, condone a CR that continues what happened when my Republican colleagues did what they thought was right, I assume, and passed the legislation without the help of Democrats? Well, if you can pass the initial legislation without the help of Democrats, why do you want me to join in your CR? Pass this without my help. Censured, but not silenced. I stand now where I stood then. I went out and I addressed the press. I didn't go out to address the press. The press asked and appealed to me to come over. I was making my way to my home where I could watch the rest of the joint session of Congress. But I went over to the press and I said to them what I said to the president. I am on record. why would I now decide that I somehow conclude that what was done to Medicaid and Medicare is somehow something that I would now condone? I have said, and I continue to say, this piece of legislation that was passed, not the CR, but the original legislation, the one big ugly steal of a bill, this piece of legislation, as it continues to develop, is going to hurt people on Medicaid. And if you live long enough, you're going to need Medicaid. Because if you live long enough, you're going to need some sort of long-term health care, if you're fortunate enough. And you're going to get that from Medicaid. I refuse to change my position. I stand now where I stood then. And I believe that what we are doing with the greatest cut in health care history to health care, the greatest cut in health care ever. And all we are trying to do as Democrats, or at least this one Democrat, I don't speak for the Democratic Party. I speak for myself and everybody who agrees with me. What we're trying to do is to protect Medicare. That's all that CR is about for me. It's about a lot of other things as well, but I'm trying to protect Medicare as I tried at the joint session of Congress. I'm going to stand where I stood then. And I'm proud to tell you that Democrats have produced some documents that encapsulate, that are terse but very much substantive in terms of what this appeal is all about. The style of it is, what are the elements of the Republican health care crisis? And there is a health care crisis. And the Democratic Party has passed this on to me. I want to give them full credit for it. I'm going to adopt it as my own, but I did not produce it. Says here, this is a part of the crisis. Slashing Medicaid with the largest cut in history. Well, I said that. I'm repeating myself. Some things bear repeating. Slashing Medicaid with the largest cut in history. I can't condone that. If I had voted for this CR, that's what I'd be doing. You passed it without my help before. Why would you expect me to support it now? I want to change that. I'm not a status quo politician. Next point. Dramatically raises premiums, co-pays, and deductibles for tens of millions of Americans. There are people who are living on the margins, barely capable of affording health care, and this legislation is going to make it impossible for some of them to afford health care. These premiums and co-pays and deductibles are going to go up for a good many people who can't afford them. We're trying to change that. Or I am. I support this. Goes on to say, forcing hospitals and community health centers across the nation to close. That is no joke. People are starting to see it. They're starting to express their consternation. They're starting to let the people know that somehow this must not happen. They want to change it. If they want to change it, why would I vote to continue it? I refuse to change my position. I stand now where I stood then. Goes on to indicate setting in motion $536 billion in cuts to Medicaid. $536 billion in cuts to Medicaid. Mr. Speaker, that sums it up. That sums it up. I stand now where I stood then. I am a liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, unafraid, Censured, not silenced. I stand for the people that I have been faithful to in my congressional district. I am going to be faithful to them to the very end, wherever and whenever that occurs. I stand for what is best to help them through these turbulent times and the crisis that the GOP healthcare initiatives have introduced to people who are in need of health care. I close with this, Mr. Speaker. In this, the richest country in the world, we cannot allow health care to become wealth care. We cannot allow health care to become wealth care. We also cannot allow health care to line the pockets of the wealthy. That's another form of wealth care. Health care to become wealth care for the wealthy. The cuts are going to line the pockets of the very wealthy in this country. That has been published. It has been accepted, it seems, by all or a good many, except me. I don't accept that. I refuse to allow health care to become wealth care and do it in the sense that it becomes the wealthy that benefit the most from the cuts that are taking place. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand now where I stood then, censured but not silenced. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., September 19th, 2025. I hereby designate the period from Friday, September 19th, 2025 through Sunday, September 28th, 2025 as a district work period under Clause 13 of Rule 1. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3, 2025, the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the House has just voted to pass a continuing resolution that is now going over to the Senate with the Democrat leader, Chuck Schumer, pledging that his caucus will be united against it, barreling us towards a potential government shutdown that would very much not be in the interest of anyone and would be terrible for the country as a whole. The minority leader in the Senate has not been abundantly clear as to what exactly he's looking for in order to avoid this outcome. After all, we're dealing with a so-called clean CR, which simply extends funding levels as they've been for quite some time now. Really not the way things should be done, by the way. But that's where we are and is the only proposal on the table for avoiding such a shutdown. I have a thought on how this whole terrible outcome can potentially be avoided in a way that would satisfy members on both sides of the aisle and keep the government open, which is to include in the continuing resolution language that will preserve the congressional maps in every state in the country as they existed at the time of the 2024 election. I have proposed legislation myself along those lines to stop this horrible redistricting war that we see playing out across the country that is bad for representative government, and is widely opposed by members of both the Democrat and Republican conference in the House. So that is my proposal, to avoid a shutdown, to give the minority leader, Chuck Schumer, in the Senate something that he can claim he delivered that would help members of the, at least, Democrat conference here in the House. We simply reach a deal where we say we're going to stop this redistricting war. We're not going to be upending maps in the middle of the decade. This could be done easily. It could be put into the continuing resolution that the House just sent over to the Senate. And here are the two main virtues of this proposal. Number one, the proposal is widely supported by the American people. 66% to 23%. The American people say we should not be engaging in redistricting mid-decade. That's according to a recent Noble Insights poll. By a 3-to-1 margin, Americans support the legislation that I have proposed, support the idea that we should not be throwing out congressional maps, upending districts, dissevering the connection between voters and their representatives in the middle of the decade. Not only do the American people support this proposal, but members of the House on both sides of the aisle do. How do we know that? Well, on the Democrat side, you just had a number of members of the House who announced their own bill to get rid of mid-decade redistricting. And on the Republican side, I have members come up to me every day saying that what I am proposing is the right thing for them, the right thing for their districts, the right thing for their states, and the right thing for the country. The only thing that is stopping us from moving forward on this common sense proposal is the refusal on the part of the Speaker of the House to put on the floor a piece of legislation that is widely supported by members of the House and by the American people. Well, the ball is now in the Senate's court when it comes to government funding. And I am absolutely opposed to a government shutdown. That's why I supported the stopgap funding measure today, even though I don't think it should have come to this. Now the Senate has an opportunity to negotiate a compromise that has to, by its very nature, be bipartisan, given the rules of the Senate, that will keep the House open. And I would submit that a way to do that, that would be in the interest of everyone here in this institution, would be to reach an agreement that keeps the government open, that provides us some runway to actually pass a budget, which we should have done a long time ago, and will stop this chaos of upending one district after another and state after state from cascading across the country. Mr. Speaker, I would like to provide an update on Proposition 50 that is set for a vote in California, otherwise known as Gavin Newsom's redistricting sham. This is a proposal by the governor to tear up the map drawn by California's independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, to abolish the redistricting commission that was put in place by the voters, and to impose a hyper-partisan map drawn by politicians without any input from the public as setting the new boundaries for congressional representation in California. It is an attempt to override what the voters have said 3 separate times in California, that redistricting should be done by an independent commission, and to move us back to the era of partisan gerrymandering. Now, as bad as this proposal is on its face, what's even worse is the cost of simply administering this special election. Because we're not supposed to be having an election right now. This is 2025, a non-election year. And in order to get this sham through, in order to reverse the will of the voters, the governor needs to produce an artifact of voter approval. So they've come up with this fraudulent ballot measure that is designed to mislead voters and to confuse them into overturning what they had done before. And what's more, it's doing so in a way that relies upon not only voter fraud, confusing people, but also voter suppression, limiting voting opportunities. I've heard directly from the registrars of voters in my district saying that because they've thrown out all of the rules for elections in California, because they've condensed the timeline beyond anything we've ever seen, they're not able to have the polling place open that they'd like. They're having fewer voting centers. The typical places that they use for voting, they're not able to use because those places have already been booked. They're not able to get out the sort of notifications to voters that they usually do. The voter guide is not being mailed to voters when it should, and it's going to be a digital-only voter guide. So think about how perverse that is. They lie to voters on the description on the ballot as to what the initiative actually does, and then they withhold from them the voter guide that would actually give voters the text, the actual text of the initiative, and arguments from folks on both sides. So in order to conduct this impromptu, unscheduled, hyper-rushed special election where we're not supposed to be having an election at all in a way that suppresses the will of voters and suppresses voter participation, it is going to cost California voters nearly $300 million. That's right, 282, to be exact, $million is the cost of administering this election whose only purpose is to return California to the era of political gerrymandering. That is the only thing on the ballot. $282 million in taxpayer funding at a time when California has a massive budget deficit, when the governor has cut funding for foster kids in our state, saying we don't have enough money, but he has $282 million to return us to the era of political gerrymandering. At a time when the governor is refusing to fund Proposition 36, the initiative to restore appropriate consequences for retail theft and to get drug offenders access to treatment. It was passed by California voters overwhelmingly last year, nearly 70% of the vote, over Governor Newsom's opposition, and yet he's not funding it. He is again trying to ignore and overturn the will of voters. So much so that the Democrat mayor of San Jose called what Newsom is doing, quote, a joke. So he doesn't have the funds to keep California safe. He doesn't have the funds for foster kids. He's running a massive budget deficit. He's defaulted on a $20 billion loan that he took out from the federal government, forcing small businesses to pay it back themselves through a tax increase. Yet he's somehow found $282 million in taxpayer funds to conduct a snap special election to hyper-gerrymander our state. It is one of the most disgraceful, if not the most disgraceful, acts of any elected official in modern California history. And you don't have to take my word for that. This scheme has provoked widespread, bipartisan opposition. Just today, the first chair of the California Independent Redistricting Commission, who is a registered Democrat, has an op-ed in Cal Matters saying that this is exactly the wrong thing to do. Former Governor Schwarzenegger came out a few days ago in strong opposition to Prop 50, calling it insane. Governor Schwarzenegger called Governor Newsom's scheme insane. He said this is getting rid of the democratic principles of California. He derided the fact that this was a map drawn by the politicians without any input from the people. Now, Governor Newsom is in the process of trying to mislead voters not only through his ballot description, but also through all kinds of campaign ads, with $10 million of funding that just came in from George Soros, with all of his favored special interests in Sacramento getting behind it, with commercials saying that this is actually preserving independent redistricting, when literally the entire point of the initiative is to throw out the map created by our independent redistricting and return power to the hands of partisan politicians. By the way, it has also come out that this map has been drawn in such a way as to provide new districts for the very politicians who drew the map to run in. The Speaker of the State Assembly and the President of the State Senate have been given their own special districts to run in for Congress if this map gets adopted, which is all the more reason why California voters have said on multiple occasions, we don't want politicians drawing maps. And indeed, the Constitution of California, in addition to saying that an independent commission draws the lines, specifically says that these sort of considerations, favoring a powerful politician, favoring an incumbent, drawing them in such a way as to give one person an edge or to have someone's home be in this district versus that one, that none of that is allowed under California's current constitution. But the way that this governor's redistricting sham has been drawn, it says that literally everything else in the Constitution is to be ignored. Every provision that provides for the protection for voters, that provides for fair districts, that keeps communities together in the process of drawing district lines, that says you cannot favor politicians or candidates in every way, that says you cannot consider partisan outcomes, all of that is completely blown up by this initiative. It says partisan gerrymandering is the new law of the land in California, the highest law of the land. Notwithstanding, it says anything else that exists in our state's constitution. So, Mr. Speaker, the governor is trying to stack the deck in every way he can against the people of California, to try to overturn their will, to try to confuse them, to fool them, to mislead them, to suppress their opportunity to participate, so that he gets more power and they lose power. And the task for those who care about good government, for those who care about our democracy in California, for people of decency on all sides of the aisle, is simply to make sure that folks understand the truth over these next few weeks as this election is conducted. Mr. Speaker, we've just got some alarming news, which unfortunately is unsurprising, which is that California, once again, has the highest poverty rate of any state in the country. Despite the fact that we have some of the world's leading companies and all of the inherent advantages that we have as a state, we continue to lead the state in poverty with 7 million, the nation in poverty with 7 million people, 17.7% of our residents not able to cover their basic needs. What's perhaps even more alarming is just since 2021, child poverty in California has doubled. Child poverty in California, the number of kids living below the poverty line, has doubled in California just in the last 4 years. That, sadly, is the price of failed leadership, as our state's supermajority and governor continue to impose policies that raise the cost of living while lowering economic opportunity. Those two factors combine to produce poverty in California unlike exists anywhere else in the United States. In addition to ranking number 1 in poverty, California also ranks number 1 in homelessness, number 1 in unemployment, and number 1 in wage stagnation. And it's no secret why. The state continues to impose regulations that raise the cost of doing business in the state, that raise the cost of housing, that raise the cost of water, that raise the cost of electricity, that raise the cost of just about every other good that a person needs, continues to impose the highest taxes in the country, including the highest taxes on gas, with new regulations now coming into place that one study estimated is going to raise the price of gasoline in California to $8 a gallon by the end of next year. So, Mr. Speaker, I am doing everything that I can here to counteract the failed corrupt policies that that we see coming out of Sacramento. And we've had some successes. For example, I recently introduced and we passed a resolution to overturn California's ban on gas-powered cars, which means that Californians will continue to be able to drive the car of their choice, not one chosen for them by the government. And it will save Californians a significant amount when it comes to the cost of their vehicle. We're also working on legislation. We've indeed secured funding to increase our state's water supply and to expand our domestic energy production in order to lower the price of gas and electricity in our state. But there's only so much we can do at the federal level when our state's politicians continue to fail the people of California. So I am continuing to urge leaders in Sacramento to work on common sense legislation to lower the cost of living in our state and to end the attacks on workers that have given us the nation's highest unemployment. We have so much potential in California. We are the greatest state in the country in so many ways, and if we simply had halfway decent policies in Sacramento, we would not have these outrageously tragic outcomes of having the highest poverty of any state in the country. Mr. Speaker, we have recently succeeded here in cutting off funding for the California high-speed rail disaster, which is, in my view, the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. I introduced a bill at the beginning of this Congress saying that we should cut off all funding for high-speed rail, and following an investigation with Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, we have succeeded in doing just that. And yet, the governor of California has, rather than seeing the writing on the wall and winding this failed project down, has now said he's going to spend $20 billion more to keep it on life support, and has even accused me of lying, saying Representative Kiley continues to lie about California high-speed rail. So look, I am more than willing to be proven wrong. I am happy to be proven wrong. If the governor and his team would like to take me for a trip on the high-speed train from San Francisco to Los Angeles that was supposed to be built 5 years ago, I will happily retract my criticism. I am ready to hop on board when I fly home to California today. If the train is there, I will acknowledge my mistake and admit the accusation that has been leveled against me. But I don't think that's going to happen because no such train exists. In fact, not only do we not have a train from San Francisco to LA that was supposed to be finished 5 years ago, we don't have any stations, we do not have any track at all that has been laid, not a single passenger has ridden anything. And now, the latest word is that even the initial segment from Bakersfield to Merced, that's not LA to San Francisco. For those who are less familiar with California geography, it is not a particularly populated area. That is even going to miss its 2033 deadline. The latest ambitious plan that's put forward is that maybe by 2045, we'll have a line from Palmdale to Gilroy, which would require taking 3 separate transit lines, a total of 6 hours, to get from LA to San Francisco, which you could do today on any airline in about an hour. So, Mr. Speaker, if I am lying, apparently a lot of other people are lying too. The New York Times, I suppose, is lying when it reported in an expose that this project is not on track to be completed even this century. So where do we go from here? Well, in my view, in cutting off federal funding, we have limited what opportunities the governor has to cause further damage to our state. He's come out and said, well, we're going to spend another $20 billion, but that's over the next 20 years. This is nothing more than an attempt to save face because the governor knows that I'm not lying. The governor knows this project is an embarrassing disaster. And he also knows that he's out of office in about a year. And so once we have a new governor, and we have in statute the commitment to not provide any more federal funding, which has kept the project transportation dollars can go where they're actually needed to fixing our failing roads and providing for California's real transportation needs. Mr. Speaker, we've just received the latest report on the performance of students across this country when it comes to math and reading and civics. And the results are absolutely alarming. We have seen now 12th grade math scores reach the lowest score ever reported, with 45% of students not even showing the basic skills. The highest portion of students ever to fall below basic proficiency. Nearly half of the nation's students can't even apply single-step percentages to solve real-world problems. Less than a quarter, only 22% of 12th graders scored at or above proficient in math, down 2 points from 2019. The low scores are seen in these core subjects, and they're even below scores almost 2 decades earlier. And the data shows that this trend has continued and was started even before COVID-19. In 2024, only a third of 12th graders were considered academically ready for entry-level college math work, down 4% since 2019. We see similar results in reading. Over 32%, the largest percentage ever, scored below proficient in reading. And so when we look at both math and reading, we're seeing the worst performance ever for students across this country. I've been raising alarms about this trend for some time now. And as the chair of the House Subcommittee on K-12 education, we have been looking at how we can reverse this trajectory, which has been continuing for far too long in this country. And the truth is, we don't have to look far, because there are some places in America that are defying this alarming trend, that are applying basic principles of propelling student achievement in order to perform in a diametrically different way than schools elsewhere in the country. So to take one example, which we highlighted at a hearing earlier this year, you can look at Success Academy, which is a network of nearly 60 charter schools in New York. And I have here just one measure of their extraordinary success. As background, it should be understood that the demographics of Success Academy are largely students from underserved communities, with in fact 76% coming from economically disadvantaged homes. So when you look at this chart, you can see the number of students who passed one or more AP exam of the roughly 1,500 students, high school students, that Success Academy has. This is their network of schools, nearly 60 charter schools, but 1,500 high school students. 100% of their students passed at least one AP exam. These other bars are different states. You see 24% for Rhode Island, 24% for Vermont, 27% Virginia, 26% Colorado. Even states that do pretty well in the high 20s. California, which does not do so well, 28%. Massachusetts is the state with the highest score, 33%. Success Academy, 100%. In fact, every Success Academy high school graduate has been accepted to a four-year college, with many admitted to highly selective institutions. Overall, we've seen students led this at Success Academy
last year led the entire state in math scores, with 49% of black and 55% of Hispanic students earning 4s, which is the highest level on the state exam. Now, by contrast, New York City's district schools, comparatively, compared to that, 8% of black and Hispanic students earned 4s. So 49% and 55% versus 8%. That is an astounding difference at a network of schools where the vast majority of students are below the poverty line. As a matter of fact, if Success Academy were its own district, it would be the single highest ranking school district in the state of New York. I had the opportunity to visit one of their schools just last week, and I was truly inspired by what I saw. The students were engaged in every classroom I visited. They were enthusiastic about learning, eager to participate, attentive. I didn't see one student's eyes wander or one disruption. The teachers were likewise truly passionate about the work that they were doing. The students are held to very high expectations and taught math and reading in a rigorous way, in an evidence-based way. They're taught things like focus by learning chess starting in kindergarten. And they've created a culture within each of their schools of high expectations that is felt in every classroom and by every student. It's no wonder that parents in New York are clamoring to get their kids into these schools. I had the chance to meet a number of these parents as well while I was there. The last time, for the last year, for the 3,200 spots that were available, there were 16,000 families that applied. And the law for charter schools is that you do a lottery. So 16,000 families applied, 3,200 lottery spots. If you won the lottery, then your child gets the chance to go to the highest performing network of schools in the state of New York, a network where 100% of the students are accepted to four-year universities, where 100% of high school students pass at least one AP exam, and where over 6 times more students achieve the highest level of proficiency as similarly situated students in district schools in New York City. Now, you would think that politicians in Albany, or for that matter in Sacramento, because our state has similar success stories when it comes to high-performing charter school networks, would be doing everything possible to expand these opportunities, but just the contrary. In New York, they have actually capped the number of charter schools that can be started, and in California, Governor Newsom and the supermajority have conducted a years-long war against charter schools, making it harder for them to start up and easier for them to be shut down. So I think it is important for us to reflect on these two sets of data. On the one hand, the nation's report card showing that our nation is in big trouble because of the continuing decline and failure of our public education system. But on the other hand, inspiring stories like that of Success Academy, where you have nearly 60 schools that are achieving extraordinary things for kids coming largely from underprivileged backgrounds. The urgent question that we need to ask is, how do we make every school in America look more like Success Academy, or more like the KIPP network of schools, or more like any number of successful charter networks, and for that matter, those traditional public schools that are doing a good job as well. We have been highlighting in our subcommittee why it is that we have this vast divergence in outcomes. And while education is largely the domain of state and local jurisdictions, we will continue to use whatever tools we have to encourage the adoption of best practices and to work towards accountability for those who are failing our students year after year. Mr. Speaker, I rise to highlight some curious news out of my state in California. It has just been revealed that a dog successfully voted in a recent election in California. The dog received a ballot in the mail and successfully cast that ballot, and indeed, even after the dog died, continued to receive a ballot in the mail. Now, the owner has now been charged by the Orange County District Attorney's Office for illegally registering her dog to vote, but she probably would have got away with it if she hadn't posted a photo of her dog on social media wearing an "I voted" sticker. So the individual here has been charged with a number of felonies for perjury, for procuring or offering a false or forged document, 2 felony counts of casting a ballot when not entitled to vote, 1 felony count of registering a non-existent person to vote. Just to be clear, dogs are not actually allowed to vote in California. And yet, in this case, the animal did. So the question we have to ask, Mr. Speaker, is how in the world do we have so few safeguards on our electoral process in California that such a thing could ever happen? I have proposed common sense solutions to this problem, requiring voter ID and passing the SAVE Act here in Congress to require proof of citizenship when registering to vote. Because while this is obviously a crazy example, a lot of people in our state lack trust in the integrity of our electoral process, especially when laws are passed year after year after year in the legislature, where now ballots are automatically sent to every registered voter, and those ballots continue to go out often when the voter has left the state or when the voter is no longer with us, where there is no proof of ID in order to register to vote or actually to vote, when registration is done automatically when one gets their driver's license, and where in recent years, ballot harvesting laws have been passed where you don't even have to submit your ballot yourself, but someone could just come to your door and grab it for you. I think it is past time that we have reforms to our electoral process in California, and frankly, nationwide as well. I've discussed my opposition to partisan gerrymandering, and in addition to stopping this redistricting war right now going on, I believe that by the time we have the next round of scheduled redistricting, we need to end gerrymandering once and for all in this country. And I think perhaps there's a bargain that can be struck to have legislation that will protect the fairness of elections across America by instituting universal voter ID while ending gerrymandering once and for all. I believe that will restore fairness in American elections, and our democracy will be much better off for it. I would now like to yield to my colleague from North Carolina for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the life of Officer Gabriel Steinbeck, a young man taken far too soon in a senseless tragedy. Officer Steinbeck had just begun his career in law enforcement, sworn in last December to the Cornelius Police Department in North Carolina. He had a bright future ahead of him. Gabe was recently married. He and his wife, Tiana, were out on a bike ride together when he was struck and killed by a vehicle. No family should ever have to endure that kind of loss. This was a young man who put his heart into his community. He was a state champion athlete, a college graduate, a pilot, and above all, someone who loved his faith and loved his family as well as his community. I want to extend my deepest condolences to his wife, his parents, and fellow officers. Officer Steinbeck represented the very best of us, and we will not forget him. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Officer William Bill Broadway of the Huntersville Police Department, who recently lost his battle with cancer. In 2016, he joined the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and later returned to serve closer to his home in Huntersville. His colleagues remember him for his professionalism, but more so for the compassion and the courage that he brought to the job every single day. Bill faced his cancer diagnosis with the same strength that he showed throughout his life. Even in his final days, his faith remained strong and his love for his family was unwavering. Officer Broadway leaves behind a legacy of service and sacrifice that will never be forgotten. I extend my deepest condolences to his wife, Sarah, his son, Declan, and the entire Broadway family. With that, I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 452, an act to award 3 congressional gold medals to the members of the 1980 U.S. Olympic men's ice hockey team in recognition of their extraordinary achievement at the 1980 Winter Olympics where, being comprised of amateur collegiate players, they defeated the dominant Soviet hockey team in the historic Miracle on Ice, revitalizing American morale at the height of the Cold War, inspiring generations and transforming the sport of hockey in the United States.
Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. on Tuesday, September 23, 2025.